I drove for almost 8 hours after a business trip that kept me away all weekend. I was happy when I finally saw the facade of my building in front of me. It was close to midnight at that point, and I was absolutely exhausted. All I wanted was to get to my apartment, take a quick shower, and crawl into my bed until the next day. Once I parked the car in the parking lot, I walked briskly into the building and took the elevator to the 8th floor, entered my apartment and threw myself on the couch, exhaling a home sweet home. Before I knew it, I fell asleep, and at 1 in the morning, I was awakened by a call from my mother. She recently moved to Germany and was still not used to the time difference. While I was talking to her, I went to the balcony to smoke a cigarette, and that's when I realized that the box was empty. I talked to my mom for a while and then headed back to the elevator. Fortunately, next to my building, there is a small store open 24 hours, and I really wanted a cigarette. I got on the elevator and selected the first floor, but it stopped on the 6th floor, and when the door opened, there stood a thin woman with sunken cheeks, tangled hair, and pronounced dark circles under her vacant eyes. When she entered, I saw her feet and was startled because she was barefoot. The woman entered the elevator while clutching her stomach as if in pain and with her head down. I looked at her holding my breath, keeping as far away from her as possible because of her dirty appearance and bad smell. It didn't take me long to realize that she was homeless. She looked around the elevator floor for a long while with her head down at all times, as if she had lost something. The strange thing was that she kept looking around even though there was nothing on the floor. I finally got out of the elevator quickly, keeping her from feeling uneasy or anything, as her attitude was very strange. When I came back from buying my cigarettes, I pressed the elevator button to go up to my apartment. Then it stopped again at floor 6, even though the board did not indicate that someone had called. The door opened, and now the woman was lying face down and looking around the floor, like when you're looking for something under the bed and you almost have to crawl to see. For a moment, I debated whether to get off the elevator and take the next 2 floors up the stairs, or just close the door and leave her there, because the truth is, I was scared of this woman, but in the end she got on and lay there pressing her abdomen again, just like before. But the strangest thing happened when we got to my floor, because at that moment the elevator opened the door, but before I could take a step out of it, it closed again and went back to the 6th floor without further ado. There the door opened again, and then the woman threw herself face down on the floor again and crawled out of the elevator. Shocked by the strange scene I had just witnessed, I spent the rest of the night speculating about the identity of the woman on the 6th floor, and could only come to the conclusion that she was a deranged vagrant who broke into some apartment on that floor. A couple of days later, when I had already forgotten the matter, I went out again late at night to buy cigarettes. Once again, I entered the elevator to get to the 1st floor, but it stopped again on the 6th floor and the door opened. But now it was a man with messy hair and dirty clothes who got on the elevator with his head down, barefoot, clutching his belly as if in pain and looking around the floor as if he was looking for something. Same as the woman from the other night. I was so curious about what they were looking for, I decided to put aside my fears and took a chance on the man. "Excuse me, what are you looking for?" I asked. The man, who was still looking around the floor, lifted his face and looked at me. I almost had a heart attack when I saw his eyes, because they were blank, and his face looked so creepy that the very image of it sent shivers down my spine. The man stared at me and whispered, "I lost something in my stomach, it hurts." The man blurted out these incomprehensible words and then lay face down on the floor and started stumbling around looking for something. I stepped out of the elevator absolutely terrified, thinking hard about what the relationship would be between the man and the woman I had seen the other day. The woman took the elevator from the 6th floor, and the man also took the elevator from there. They were both kind of homeless, barefoot, clutching their stomachs as if in pain and lying on the floor looking for something. I figured they must be a strange couple living on floor 6. So I went straight to the building management office and said to the concierge, "Hi, I'm Michael Dan. I live in apartment 802. Excuse me, could you tell me if there is a strange couple living on the 6th floor, because there is a barefoot man and woman who take the elevator from that floor all the time, and they look like homeless people. They looked very thin and dirty. The concierge looked at me quizzically for a moment, then looked at the tenant list and said there was no couple living on the 6th floor. I immediately thought, if the couple doesn't live on the 6th floor, then who the hell are they? Feeling frustrated, I pulled the bill for the 6th floor out of the mailbox where the maintenance fee receipts are delivered, and that's when I discovered a very strange bill. There were 2 homes on the 6th floor, 6-01 and 6-02. The water bill for room 6-01 was $35 per month, but the water bill for room 6-02 was $630. What is this? How could the water bill be over $600 per month? I began to doubt room 6-02, a number that could not be understood. There must have been all kinds of strange things going on in this apartment on the 6th floor. The next day, I was heading for the elevator as usual, but it was about to close, so I hurriedly ran up and pressed the open button, and as I stepped inside, I noticed 2 big, tough-looking men inside. I looked at them and tried to press the button for the 1st floor, but when I looked at the board, I found that they had pressed the button for the 6th floor. I immediately suspected that these men were the tenants of apartment 602. The men were carrying a large golf bag, and a strange odor was coming from it. The bag seemed heavy, and I was so curious to find out what the mystery of the 6th floor was that I ducked in front of the elevator door to make sure they were entering precisely that apartment, and I was not mistaken, as it was just the door of 602 that the men opened. I then returned to the elevator, and to my surprise, there were small drops of blood where they had left the golf bag. Immediately, my mind began to do the math. Strange barefoot bums, $600 plus water bills, a bag of golf clubs covered in blood. It was all very strange, and I had no idea in what way all these things were related, but something told me they were, and it wasn't good. After returning home, I thought about it for quite a while and finally called the police. When I talked to them, I told them everything I had seen on the 6th floor. Shortly thereafter, the police arrived with a warrant and thoroughly searched apartment 602. But what they found there is something no one was prepared for. The kitchen and living room of the apartment were completely normal, but the 2 bedrooms had been converted into clandestine operating rooms. In one of them, there was a large freezer, and in there they found 2 dismembered bodies with all the organs removed, and even on the operating table, there was the body of a boy no more than 14 years old who probably died just a few hours ago. In the golf bag, there was a small cooler where they found blood. It turned out that the men in room 602 were members of an organization that specialized in organ trafficking. These men would lure homeless people with the promise of giving them food and shelter, kidnap them, and then call the organization's doctor to harvest their organs against their will. It was horrible and very macabre. It turned out that the incredible amount in the water bill was due to the large amount they used to remove the blood from the corpses and clean up the scene. I asked the police if they had seen any homeless people alive during the search in room 6-02, and they assured me no. Then I told them that I had run into 2 of them these days in the elevator, but the officers assured me that there were no signs of other people in the apartment, just those 2 bodies in the refrigerator that were at least a week old. No way. I'm sure I met them in the elevator less than 3 days ago, first with a woman and just last night with a man, I told the cops. They looked at each other and said, "Then let's check the CCTV footage. Follow us." A few minutes later, we were in the surveillance room and we saw the elevator video from those days. But when I saw it, I was cold. In the camera images, there were no homeless people I had seen. The camera had filmed me alone in an empty elevator. In the images, I could see that I was making gestures as if I was looking at something, following it with my eyes and making strange gestures, Even in the most recent one, it was evident that I seemed to be talking to someone and making gestures. But in reality, I was alone. I was very surprised to see the video of me asking nothingness what I was looking for by looking at the floor. But I saw it with my own eyes. I swear the man was there. I said to the officers in complete bewilderment. Am I seeing things? I thought to myself. They just shrugged, probably thinking I was crazy. 3 days later, an autopsy on the dismembered bodies in the freezer revealed that they were an unidentified adult female and an adult male. Of course, the police said the victims were probably homeless, since their fingerprints were not registered. But then a big question formed in my head. Who were the homeless people I saw in the elevator by chance? Were they the ghosts of the people whose organs were removed in apartment 602? Were their souls wandering in the building in search of justice, perhaps? Thinking about this gave me chills, but it also filled me with a deep sorrow. After all, God only knows the misfortunes that led these people to live on the streets, the terrible things they had to see and live through as homeless people, to then face the horror of falling into the hands of these evil and sick beings, and if that wasn't punishment enough, not being able to find peace, even in death. I could not help but feel a deep sorrow for them, whoever they were. I only hope that after justice has finally been done, their souls will finally find the rest and peace they surely did not have in life. What could be worse than starving to death night after night? What torture could surpass that of feeling your stomach devour itself as the elements punish your exposed skin through your tattered sleeping bag? Well, as hard as it is to believe, there is something worse. People. The contempt of society that looks at homeless people as if they are not human beings, as if they are just a pest that hinders your day-to-day life. I can't deny that there is the occasional person who is kind and has a sense of humanity, but generally these people look at you with pity, which to my way of thinking is just another kind of contempt. But at least these people are not out to hurt you. It's been 10 years since I last slept outdoors. This was definitely the lowest point in my life, something I avoided talking about because I'm not proud of it. So much so that I wasn't able to tell my wife about it until just a couple of years ago. However, there are details so dark from that stage of my life that to this day I have not been able to share them with anyone, but not a day goes by that I don't think about it. I remember clearly the first time I tried a drug. I was 19 years old and I was at a college party. Then there was a girl I liked, and it was her who induced me into this world of parties, alcohol, and consumption of illicit substances. I started out like most, with weed, and then I escalated to harder stuff, and as it tends to happen in almost all cases, it wasn't long before my life was turned upside down. I dropped out of college, got in trouble with my parents, moved out of the house, lost my part-time job at a local restaurant, and in short, within a year and a half, I was on the streets living as a bum. I wandered for about 3 years since then, and at one point I remembered that my family had a property in a small town located in another state. That's where I lived the first years of my childhood, and as far as I knew, that property was never sold. We just moved and left it behind. But in the situation I was in, I thought a lot about that place, how beautiful it was and how different my life was at that time. So I decided to get there, take shelter in my old house, and start a new life. The next few months, I wandered from city to city, always looking for a busy central area to earn some petty cash. At the same time, I was still recovering from the horrors of drug abuse that tortured my every waking thought. Every penny I earned I used on buses to the next city, sometimes on food and on very rare occasions a hot shower, until I finally found the city I grew up in, and the last place I remembered being genuinely happy, when things were simpler, before drugs. I left the terminal, and since I had no more money, I decided to walk several kilometers until I reached my town. I didn't even bother to ask anyone for a ride, as it was clear to me that no one would give a homeless man a lift in their car, so I had no choice but to walk under the inclement sun until I finally reached my old town. I couldn't believe that I was finally only a few steps away from my old house. As far as I remembered, it was located in the middle of a small plot of land in the middle of the forest, behind a couple of rows of trees that were next to the river. At that moment, I was standing right in front of the forest, and I was really very excited to be there. I couldn't wait to get to the house and be able to sleep under a roof for the first time in over 3 years. And also for the first time in all that time, I was excited for the future. I really felt that this would be a new beginning for me. So I didn't wait any longer and made my way through the forest. The bushes surrounding the house had grown with age, and the small tree next to the river was now almost as tall as the bridge that hung over it. Time had definitely passed us all by. It had been a long journey here, and the sun was already sinking below the horizon. There was plenty of time to walk along the riverbank to the small space between the bushes that framed the driveway to the house. I first pushed my backpack to separate some of the twigs that had grown inward, blocking the passage, practically using it as a shield as I advanced through these bushes, until I felt it fall on the other side. So feeling already completely exhausted, I forced my body until I came out noisily at the other end. I fell to the ground with a loud thud. Once I had stabilized, I looked up, excited to feel the avalanche of memories rushing over me. But when I looked up, I was very surprised. It was a garbage dump. There were large piles of garbage lying everywhere, tattered sleeping bags scattered on the mud, used syringes sticking out of the ground, some lying on empty cans and on the floor. The lack of hygiene was evident, as was the fact that the house was definitely not alone. As I got closer to the house, a rancid and nauseating smell emerged. There was a pile of meat on some sort of metal griddle that was laid out outside the house, as if it was being dried in the sun. It was heartbreaking to see my once beloved home being used with such disrespect, but in what position was I to judge? I went into the house looking for whoever was there, but found no one. The house smelled awful, as if there were a bunch of rotting animals inside. It was disgusting, but I still had to look for a place to sleep because I had nowhere to stay that night anyway, so I found a relatively clean place in the corner farthest from the entrance. As I crawled into my rotting sleeping bag, I felt the memories of my childhood seep in one by one. Tears began to well up in my eyes, and I finally drifted off to sleep. What must have been hours later, I awoke to the sound of rustling leaves on the other side of the pile of garbage and flesh. When my eyes opened, I immediately realized the source of the rustling, the figure of a man who let himself be seen through the moonlight streaming through the doorway. The man stood in the doorway. It was too dark to make out details, but I could see that the figure held a sack on his back. He was also a homeless man, but for some reason he stood there. I guessed he didn't see me. Suddenly, I noticed that the man walked towards the pile of half-rotten meat that was drying outside. I saw him squat down, take out a knife and start cutting pieces of it, eating it straight from there, that is, without even cooking it. The state of that meat was disgusting. At that time I was starving, and even then I didn't dare to take a piece to eat it. I didn't even know what animal it was from, surely some servant or a wild boar, since there were some in this area. I left the house and walked outside and said to the guy, "Hey, what are you doing, man? That meat is in bad shape. It hasn't dried properly yet. If you eat that, you're going to get sick and you might even die." At that moment, the man turned his head with a whip and looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot and seemed to bulge out of their sockets. The man gave me the most unhinged look I have ever seen in my life. I instinctively took a step back and clasped my hands together in front, telling him, "Hey, calm down, I'm not a threat. You see, this is my house and I..." Before I could finish my sentence, the man interrupted me and said, "Who are you and what are you doing in my house?" His voice sounded hoarse and low, while his eyes pierced me. I can't deny that I felt scared, however. After living for almost 4 years on the street, I had already seen so many things that hardly anything could intimidate me. I stood up straight and told the man who I was and what I was doing there, this while wielding my old pocket knife in my pants pocket. When you come from surviving on the streets, you're always prepared. You'll hardly ever see a homeless man who doesn't have at least a piece of glass in his pockets to defend himself if things get ugly. The man immediately lowered his gaze to where my hand was, and most likely noticed my gesture, then smiled at me with his teeth still full of raw, half-rotten meat and welcomed me. The guy motioned for me to sit to the side, but I didn't move. Then he put his hands up and said he didn't want any trouble either. He looked at me and asked me if I was also a homeless man. I told him yes, and that was just the reason I was there, because that was my home and I wanted it back. But I also told him I had no problem if he stayed a few days until he got another place to shelter. The guy nodded his head, showing a small smile, but he affirmed that he had no problems. He told me that he was not a bad person, just someone who had nowhere to live, and seeing that the house was alone, he decided to stay there for a while. But he let me know that there were other abandoned properties in town and he had no problem moving some of them. This relieved me a little. At this point, he seemed more civilized than I thought, so he invited me to lunch. But I declined the offer. He insisted, saying, "Come on, brother, I know you must be hungry. Don't worry. Inside I have some meat that is dry and also some firewood. I'll go and get it to roast a little." The guy went into the house and I just sat there. I heard him moving a few things around inside the house, and while I was waiting, I noticed the sack lying on the floor. It looked big and heavy. As it was a bit dark, I couldn't make out the shape very well, but I noticed that there was a thick, dark liquid coming out of it, clearly blood, and I assumed that what was inside was some kind of hunting animal. However, something caught my attention, and that was that this looked like something large, and its shape did not match that of a wild boar or a deer. Curiosity got the better of me. I looked inside the house and saw that the man was not coming back, so I took it upon myself to take out my knife and cut the sack. But when I did so, my heart dropped to my stomach and I was completely petrified with panic. What was inside that sack was not a hunting animal. It was a human body, the dismembered and naked body of a person. I immediately jumped back, completely terrified. It was then when I turned around and saw the man running out of the house with a huge machete in his hand, heading towards me. At that moment, I came out of my paralyzed state and started to run, while he came after me, swinging the sharp machete at me. I don't even know how I managed to get through the bushes that I had such a hard time crossing when I arrived. The only thing I know is that I ran as fast as my legs would go. But the house was a little far from the village and this man was right on my heels. As I was about to leave the gate of the property, I tripped over a piece of wood and fell flat on my face. I immediately turned around and tried to get up, and then I saw the edge of the huge machete coming towards me. I barely managed to dodge it by spinning on the ground, but the next one managed to wound me in the forearm. It was a deep cut. But at that moment I didn't feel the pain, only the blood running while I kept spinning on the ground and desperately trying to escape from the machetes that this madman kept throwing at me. I started screaming for help, while miraculously I managed to get up and start running again. It was then when I noticed in the distance a group of people gathered in front of a house. They seemed to be having a party or something. They turned to look at me, alarmed by my screams, and I saw that they stood up. They were about 8 men who were probably gathered drinking alcohol at a neighbor's house. Then I ran towards them at full speed, shouting for help. They were far away, but they had already stood up and were coming in my direction. It was only then when I stopped hearing the steps of the guy following me, and when I turned around, I could see him running back to the forest. Fortunately, these people helped me, and I could recognize in one of them a familiar face. It was my friend Marshall, with whom I had studied in elementary school. When he came up to me and looked at me, he pronounced my name in surprise and asked me what I was doing there and what was going on. So I told them everything that happened in a rush and panting from exhaustion. They were dumbfounded and some in disbelief. Nevertheless, they took me to the hospital and called the police. My arm wound was so deep that it required not only stitches but also minor surgery. While I was recovering in the hospital after taking my statement, the police came to inspect the house. And what I learned afterwards is something that will haunt me forever. When they arrived at my old house, the man was gone, but the police found the remains of at least 15 people, some of whom had been reported missing in the community, but most turned out to be other homeless people. This man hunted other humans, then dismembered them, separated their flesh from the bones and dried it in the sun to store and eat, while the bones were buried in the backyard. Although the police managed to find a total of 15 bodies in the following days, they estimate that the number could have been much higher. During the following weeks, an intense operation was deployed to try to find the whereabouts of this subject, but there was no success until a month later, when his body was found floating in the river. It appears that he tried to swim away and drowned. After this, my intentions to return to my old home died completely. Instead, I contacted my parents again and told them what had happened. We finally settled our differences, and I returned to the other house with them. Upon learning what had happened to our old house, my father refused to sell it. Instead, he donated the land for a homeless shelter to be built on. It has been 12 years since then, and I currently live in a comfortable apartment, work as a truck driver, and have a wife and 2 beautiful children. I am very grateful to life for giving me a second chance. That night I was born again, but the trauma of what I experienced stayed with me for a long time. I still have nightmares about that night, but I have learned to live with it. I will never forget that time when I ate with the dogs. Yes, literally with the dogs. I lived on the streets after running away from an abusive foster home. I was 14 years old and had no one to call my own. No parents, nothing that belonged to me. There were days when I ate out of the dumpster along with the stray dogs. I remember one time I saw this big hamburger half eaten. I was about to grab it when a stray dog attacked me. It tried to bite me, but I grabbed the burger and ran for my life. Those years were the worst I can remember, but among all the misery and suffering, there was one night that marked my life forever, and no matter how hard I try to get rid of those memories, they will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was a very cold night, and I could barely sleep on the park bench. I was doing my best to keep my body moderately warm, but I failed horribly, and I couldn't have it any other way, considering I only had a pair of jeans and a hoodie that was proving to be useless against the cold. I got up from the bench and started walking to raise my body temperature. It was 2 a.m. and the park was all alone, but I'd rather sleep here than in those dirty alleys full of drug-addicted and potentially dangerous bums for a kid my age, helpless and lost. Rough night, huh? I heard someone say behind me. I turned around and saw a thin man of average height standing behind me. I had no idea he was walking behind me until now. He looked like a homeless person like me, but his clothes were in worse condition than mine. He was shivering. I looked around and said, "Let's light a fire, shall we?" The man nodded and started walking with me. We gathered twigs and wood and stopped under a tree. I dug a hole with my hands and he put those branches inside. Once the flames started to rise, I felt alive again. The man crouched down near the fire and began to warm his thin hands, so I asked him, "How long have you been living on the street?" I don't remember his answer, but I do know that his look made me sad and worried at the same time. I have to do something with my life or I will end up like him, was what came to my mind at that moment. Suddenly, the man looked me straight in the eye and asked me, "Do you feel sorry for me?" His question made me freeze and I was a little afraid to answer, so I didn't say anything, but he insisted that I answer him. His tone didn't seem aggressive or anything, so I told him yes. Many that his look led on that he clearly wasn't okay, but that I wasn't either, so I guess we were even. "Oh, you're worried you'll end up like me, aren't you?" He sounded kind, so I said yes again. I told him that it scared me to death to think that I would never get out of that situation, and that I would end up just like him, or like other homeless people who end up dying on the streets. He looked at me with a smile and said, "Well, you must know that I make money once in a while, you know what I mean?" I said nothing and he continued, "Once in a while I sell, then I make money and spend it until I have to sell again." Then I realized he was a drug dealer and he was trying to convince me, but I wasn't interested, so I kept quiet. The man pulled out a small flask and offered it to me. "Take a few sips, it will help." I couldn't say no because I was really hungry at that moment, and alcohol seemed to be my only option to get through the night at least warm. I took a big gulp and immediately regretted my decision. For whatever was inside that bottle, it tasted absolutely disgusting. My throat burned and my head began to feel heavy as I slowly passed out. I saw that suspicious man smiling at me with his corners stretched from ear to ear. Then his face began to distort, and I don't remember anything after that. When I woke up in the morning, I found myself lying under that same tree, but the homeless man was nowhere in sight. I tried to get up, but then I felt an excruciating pain in my stomach, but very excruciating. It felt like my insides were being ripped out. There were blood stains all over my clothes, and the first thing that came to my mind was that I had been stabbed. But when I lifted my jacket, I made a shocking discovery. There were large stitches in the side of my stomach. It had been cut and then stitched up rather roughly. At that moment, horror invaded my body. I didn't know what to think or what to do. I had no idea what they had done to me. But then I noticed that at my side was a rolled-up $10 bill tied with a rubber band along with a small piece of paper that said, "I'm sorry, but you can still live with one kidney. I had to take this deal. Don't take it personally. Rather be happy knowing that you are going to save someone's life." Reading this really horrified me. I felt like throwing up from shock, and then I was filled with anger. So that scoundrel took one of my kidneys after drugging me last night. I was beyond words. I had no money or insurance to get medical care. Tears rolled down my eyes, and I was more aware than ever that this world was too cruel to survive on my own. At that moment, I looked up at the sky and began to scream and cry out in pain. I began to berate God for sending me into this world in the condition He did, with a pair of parents who abandoned me and left me at the mercy of a sick society. I had never felt so alone and so vulnerable. What I felt at that moment is something that I cannot even describe in words, and I do not want any child in the world to have to go through it. But unfortunately, I know that there are hundreds of thousands of children who are suffering what I suffered. Seeing me behaving like that, some people gathered around me, but instead of helping me, they just watched me like an animal at the zoo. One of them brought a policeman who was patrolling nearby, and he took me to the station. They questioned me and sent me for medical attention. Being a minor and a runaway from a foster home got me noticed that day, so several doctors came to see me. They told me that whoever operated on me was not a health professional, so they cut out my kidney as if it were pork. I had severe internal bleeding and was in danger of infection as well. Although I was traumatized, at least I had a bed to sleep in and food to eat during my hospital stay. When I was finally released from there, the police decided to take me back to the same foster home I had escaped from. And the same night I was dropped off in that hellish place, I ran away again, but not to run away from the foster home, but to find that idiot who ruined my life that night. My only mission was to find him and make him pay for what he did to me, because I was pretty sure he drugged a lot of homeless kids like me, and then sold their organs for 4 cents to support his pathetic drug addict life. I knew all the places where homeless people lived during the winter nights. So after an exhausting search and hours of waiting, the opportunity finally came. I was peeing behind a bush one night when I heard a familiar voice. It's hard to sleep here on cold nights like this, huh? My heart rate sped up as I heard his disgusted voice from a close distance. He was hunting his new target, but this time I won't let him do what he's planning. I peeked behind the bush and saw a kid about my age sitting next to that skinny psycho guy. But this time his health seemed a little better. He had clearly gained a couple of pounds, probably feeding off the money he got from selling my kidney. I saw the man make some useless conversations with the kid. Then he inserted his hand inside his jacket and pulled out that flask of supposed alcohol. He offered the kid a drink, but before the kid grabbed it, I jumped out of the bushes with a really heavy tree branch and hit the man in the head really hard. The attack took him by surprise, so he could do nothing to avoid it. I could only see his eyes widen as he saw the log of wood coming towards him before he fell to the ground in a faint. The homeless kid ran away in fear, thinking it was just another street fight, and then I dragged his stupid body behind the bushes, and before anyone else saw us, I found this old abandoned cabin in the woods. Now the man was unconscious and chained to the broken and rusty bed inside that room. It was only a matter of time before he woke up and noticed the big stitch in his stomach. It's amazing how I was able to contact these guys through a drug dealer friend of mine. These students buy human organs for their research and experiments, or sometimes sell them to large hospitals or needy donors. I couldn't wait to see the look on this bastard's face once he wakes up, but then a change of plans came up. The guys offered me more money for both kidneys, his liver and his heart, and in light of the fact that it wasn't much for humanity to lose, I took the deal. All I can tell you is that I used this money to get off the streets, and today, 5 years later, I have a normal life, an apartment, and a halfway decent job that allows me to support myself. I went through a very difficult period in my life. About 5 years ago or so, I was laid off from a well-paying factory job and moved away from my family due to a lot of infighting and disagreements. This hurricane of everything that can go wrong in life happened at the same time, and it put me in a situation where all I had left was an old truck that stopped working in a hardware store parking lot, the clothes I was wearing, and what was left in my truck. I was homeless for about 6 or 7 months or so. During that whole time, I was tied up with the owner of that hardware store so he wouldn't take my truck. I explained to the man my situation. I had to live in a damn damaged van that I had no money to fix. I tried to stay at a homeless shelter, but they were always full, no matter which one I went to. They were all full of people, and there was no room for anyone else. So my old van was all I had to keep me warm, and the nights were now well below the 10-degree mark. I could literally freeze to death if I didn't have that van. At that time, I had about 3 months living in the car, so I had all my belongings in there. This was something that some vandals found out about, and one afternoon, while I was using the bathroom at the hardware store, which one of the employees had kindly lent me so I could make myself, some thieves broke the windows of my truck and took several of my personal belongings. Fortunately, my wallet and my cell phones were with me, but they took a couple of watches, some new shoes, and 1 or 2 of my personal clothes. I was furious and frustrated that day. As we were in the middle of winter and now my car had no windows, was there anything else that could go wrong in my life? The parking lot of the hardware store was surrounded by a forest, and there were no buildings nearby, other than the store itself, which was huge. That night it was around 11:30 or so, and logically, there was no one left in the place except me, and no one was driving down the road, probably because it was a Tuesday and this was a pretty small town after all. The windows of the van were now gone, and the darkness of the nearby fields, coupled with the fact that I was sleeping in the middle of a public area, meant that I didn't feel safe or secure at all. So I decided to take some of my torn work clothes I had on the back seat and tie them over the windows so I couldn't see out of them and no one could see inside, so maybe I could get some sleep. Unfortunately, I couldn't do this same thing with the windshield. It was too big and I didn't have enough spare clothes. But the way I was lying down, I couldn't see much of the windshield anyway. It was only the driver's and passenger's windows that bothered me. So after blocking them with some curtains of dirty old clothes, I tried to finally fall asleep. But when I was in this process, suddenly the shirt I had tied to the driver's side window fell off. I didn't want to finish the sentence because I remembered that my grandmother used to say that naming the devil was inviting him in. So I tried to calm down and try to put the shirt back on the torn window. But every time I put it on and thought I was all right, it suddenly slipped off again and the window was uncovered. This happened several times. It was a pain in the ass. I finally got it in a really tight knot. There was no way that knot was going to come loose, or so I thought, because after a while it came loose again. I didn't understand anything. I couldn't believe that this curtain would come loose over and over again. Or well, the shirt. Once again I tied the damned shirt, but this time instead of one I tied 2 knots. This would be hard to untie. I waited a moment to make sure it stayed in place, and seeing that it wouldn't come loose despite the breeze, I lay back down on the cushion. This worked long enough for me to fall asleep, but due to my nervousness and having to fiddle with that window so much, my body ended up jolting awake after a while, as if it was telling me to check the window again in case that stubborn shirt had fallen out again. So I looked at the window and saw that the shirt was still there. Whew, thank goodness. I rolled over and went back to bed. But just as I was about to fall asleep again, I inadvertently notched the window with my foot, causing the shirt to fall off once again. Oh God, I was so frustrated and angry at my own clumsiness. Feeling very frustrated and about to throw in the towel with the damn window, I sighed deeply and stood up. I picked up my shirt, then looked up at the window, and then my heart skipped a beat and I screamed with fright. There was someone at the driver's side window and they were looking at me. It appeared to be a young woman with jet black hair and an oval face. Her skin was a pale grayish white. I had never seen skin that color before. But that was not the biggest problem with this woman. What really made me realize that something was not right were her eyes. The woman had completely white eyes. It was as if she had no iris but only sclerae. But when I detailed it well, I realized that she did have, only that they were a whitish gray, almost transparent. I had never seen eyes of that color in my life. I also noticed that the corners of her lips and the line where they joined were of a dark color. That area looked blackened, like when you eat a grape candy and the inside of your lips turn that color. As I stood petrified staring at her with my eyes wide open and my heart pounding a mile a minute, she peeked her face out the driver's window and said simply, "It's a very cold night. Stay warm." I didn't say anything back, too terrified to articulate words. After this, she simply turned and walked out into the field. In the meantime, I kept my gaze fixed on her stamp until I lost sight of her through the trees. But what the hell did she just see? Who was this woman? Where did she come from? And what the hell was she doing in those bushes? As scared as I was, I jumped out of the truck and tried to follow her. But when I got to the tree line and saw that overwhelming darkness, I completely chickened out and went back to the truck. At that point, it was more than clear to me that I would not manage to fall asleep once again. Instead, I lay there thinking about everything that had just happened and with my head full of questions. However, almost as if it had been whispered in my ear, a thought came to my mind. What if it was the spirit of someone who needed help? I'm not a superstitious person, but coming from a small town, I've seen quite a few unexplainable things, so, without thinking too much, I ran to the nearest police station and reported what I saw. I returned to the parking lot in the police cruiser along with 2 officers. They didn't look very convinced. They probably thought I was on drugs. They took their flashlights, a sniffer dog, and went into the field to look for her. I accompanied them in the search, but after a couple of hours we had not found her whereabouts, and the weather conditions did not allow us to continue searching. However, the next morning, the officers returned to try to find the woman. Near the end of the day, they found the body of a middle-aged woman lying lifeless in a small makeshift tent in the forest. She was apparently a homeless person who had died of hypothermia. The woman responded to all the characteristics I had told them. Her eyes looked whitish, but this was because she had light eyes, and due to the freezing, they had become almost crystalline in color. Knowing this made me sad rather than scared. She did not want to hurt me. She only came to warn me to keep warm. And now that I knew what had happened to her, I understood why she said those words to me. An autopsy later revealed that the woman was at least 15 days old, and she was a homeless woman who had been living in the woods for a few years. When I think about it, I think that probably, seeing myself in the same vulnerable situation as she was, she wanted to come and warn me. Likewise, I have offered a couple of masses on her behalf since then. This is my way of showing my gratitude to her. I am Catholic, so I think this may help her find her way to eternal rest, rather than her soul wandering in that forest. Story 5. The Cockroach with a Face. I will never forget that night. The cold bench, the empty street, the cold of the night tucking me in as I fantasized about a warm bed and a blanket to protect my body from the harsh winter. Survive one more day, that was my goal. My only goal every day. Although I always wondered what was the point. After all, I had nothing to lose, nothing to gain, no dream, no hope, nothing to live for. But I guess the survival instinct is superior to any rational thought. At that moment, my life was at the bottom of the abyss, or lower. But it had not always been like that. At some point, I had a family, a girlfriend, a stable job, and many projects. However, everything went down the drain when I started using. During the day, with the bustle of cars and people passing by, I was too busy trying to get some money to eat and to pay for my addiction to think about anything. But during the nights, when all the lights went out and the silence took over the streets, thoughts tucked me in and the weight of my mistakes fell on me like a huge concrete wall. For that reason, to silence the voice of my conscience, I used to dope myself before going to bed. I was already asleep when suddenly, in the distance, I hear something like footsteps. They sound strange. Maybe my ear deceives me. They sound like insect footsteps. A cockroach? It's there. It's a cockroach walking through my dirty clothes. How strange. I can hear its footsteps as if they were those of a person. My gaze is bugging out. I can only appreciate the insect and its small form walking on me. It approaches as if it were a thinking mind that wants to communicate with me. Absurd. I'm just tired, drugged, cold, and hungry. But what else do I have to do? Nothing, really. I keep watching her and listening to her walk. It goes from my leg to my chest, and my gaze is again focusing on its shape, its structure, its face. What is that? Does it have a face? Yes, that insect has a face, and it is getting closer and closer to me. I can't move. I try to stand up to throw it off my body as fast as I can, but it's impossible. I can't scream. My body is paralyzed. It's as if this insect is huge and has trapped me. It continues walking all over my body until it reaches my ear and starts talking to me. I don't know if it's real or a dream, but yes, indeed, it is talking to me. You're hungry. Don't you miss a warm bed, clean clothes, drugs? There is a place where you can have that and more, the most beautiful and hottest women. You have nothing to lose. You have no family, no friends. Stand up and let's go. I stood up as I remembered for a moment my miserable life since I came to the city. I could never get a job or a home or get out of addiction or anything. What did I have to lose? We both walked the dreary, empty streets. I knew it was bad. I knew nothing good could come of it, but what did it matter? No one would notice my absence. No one cared. That little animal was riding on my shoulder. I felt it was wearing a smile on its stupid, supernatural face. I knew he was laughing at me. I knew he was thinking of me as stupid. Come on, I don't care. I want to see how far this goes. If I'm not dreaming, of course. Is this critter the... For all these thoughts, I hadn't noticed how far I had already walked. Like an automaton, I followed where he told me to go. Turn here, turn there, turn that way, etc. I was already at the edge of the city. No people, no noise, absolute solitude, just me and that cockroach. She was there, laughing, the unhappy one. At that moment, she told me to stop. We were near a small forest. Slowly, her head turned and her neck cracked as she looked up at me and said, "We have arrived. This is where your dreams will come true." We walked a few more steps and this cockroach with a face came down from my shoulder and began to get bigger and bigger. The huge insect made a move and pulled up some bushes. There was a hole in the ground. It motioned for me to crawl into it. I, as if hypnotized, did so. I began to move forward into the tunnel. I was on my hands and knees. I was moving fast and the cockroach with a face was coming behind me. The tunnel began to get narrower and narrower until suddenly I was no longer uncomfortable. On the contrary, I could walk with my legs. Legs? I looked at myself and I had 6 legs. What's wrong? I turned to see that cockroach and it wasn't there. On the contrary, there was a man in elegant clothes and a top hat. He laughed a little and said to me, "Thank you, deluded. I fell like you. Now you have to do the same to some other fool if you want to return to your original form. Don't curse me or judge me. I can step on you and end your miserable existence." I cried for my miserable existence. "I don't want anyone to go through this," I then pleaded. "Kill me. Do it." "Well, you asked for it." My cockroach eyes opened wide as I saw that huge foot rise above me. Its shadow covers everything and suddenly clap. I woke up in a hospital bed with an intermittent beeping sound hammering in my ears. I looked around and saw a familiar face. It was my mother, who was looking at me with pitying eyes. I remembered the last time I had seen her face. She was drenched in tears and telling me she couldn't take it anymore. I had stolen all her savings to spend on drugs, and that was the only thing she had left to pay the loan on our house after I stole all her clothes and several items from our home to pay for my vice. That time she reproached me for what I did, and I told her that I hated her and that I would leave her life forever because I never wanted to see her again. But there she was, with her eyes full of tears and deep circles under her eyes. It had been 3 nights since I had overdosed. The pastor of the church across the park, who occasionally went out in the early morning to deliver food to the homeless, found me convulsing and called an ambulance. I'm still not sure who told my mother. I don't know if it was the priest or someone else. I just know that that day my life changed forever. I didn't want to be a cockroach again. When I got out of the hospital, I entered a rehabilitation center, and although it was the hardest test of my life, I managed to come out of it with flying colors. Today I have a decent life, a decent job, and a roof over my head. I made raisins with my mother, but also with myself. I don't know what all the craziness of that dream was, or if it was real, but it definitely changed my life and my mind forever.